The crowd outside the Royal Mart superstore stood frozen like mannequins. A sleek Lexus LX had just pulled up along the dusty roadside. No one expected what happened next. A woman stepped out, tall, radiant, and commanding attention without even trying. Her figure was wrapped in an elegant cream-colored jumpsuit, her heels clicking against the pavement like a rhythm only she could walk to. Heads turned. Conversations paused. That was Adana Okafor. Before we go on, please show some kindness by subscribing to the channel, like the video and drop a nice comment. Pretty please, it would mean a lot to me. Okay, back to the story. People knew her name. She wasn't just any woman. She was the Adana Okafor. Billionaire business mogul, founder of Apex Solutions, the tech giant changing Africa's digital landscape. A face on the cover of Forbes Africa. The woman every parent secretly wished their daughter could become. But today, Adana wasn't here for a meeting, a TV interview, or to buy rare wine. She was here for something no one could guess. Her eyes were locked on a man in a faded blue cleaner's uniform, crouched by the side of the building with a mop bucket. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing skin roughened by years of work. His shoes were worn thin, almost splitting at the sides. He was wiping sweat from his brow when he noticed her walking toward him. He froze. No one like her ever approached him, certainly not with a smile. Adana stopped right in front of him. "My name is Adana," she said softly. He blinked. Samuel Ease." And then, just as the onlookers leaned closer in disbelief, she did something none of them could have imagined. "I've seen you here before," she began. "The way you speak when you chat with people, the way you talk about ideas, business, even technology, it's like you've lived in another world before this. I don't know your story, but I believe you just need one more chance." She took a deep breath, her heart thudding in her chest. "So, I'm asking you something crazy. Will you marry me?" The street went silent. Samuel's eyes widened, and his mouth parted like he'd just heard the most impossible thing. He gave a faint, almost disbelieving smile. "If you really mean that," he said slowly, "then go into that store, buy a ring, come back out, kneel down, and ask me like you mean it." Gasps erupted from the small crowd. "Is he mad?" someone whispered. "Who tells a billionaire to do that?" But Adana didn't flinch. She simply turned, walked into the store, and 5 minutes later, she returned. In her hand was a diamond ring worth more than most people's houses. Without hesitation, right there in front of dozens of shocked strangers, she bent on one knee and held it up. "Samuel Ease," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "Will you marry me?" He stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat. Cameras came out. Phones started recording. Some people laughed. Some wiped tears. Samuel looked at this stunning woman who had everything, and yet, somehow, still saw him. Not his uniform, not his sweat, not his worn-out shoes. Him. His lips trembled as he nodded slowly. "Yes," he whispered. Adana smiled, sliding the ring onto his finger. "Now," she said warmly, "get in the car." He hesitated, glancing at his dusty uniform, the faint smell of bleach still clinging to it. "I'll dirty your seat," he murmured. "I don't care," she replied. And just like that, Samuel stood up, leaving behind the mop, the bucket, and the world that had known him only as the cleaner. But Samuel had no idea. His story was just beginning. The Lexus purred quietly as Adana steered into the heart of Victoria Island, Lagos. The streets shimmered under the afternoon sun, high-rise towers glinting like mirrors. Samuel sat stiffly in the passenger seat, his hands clutching a worn nylon bag on his lap, the same bag he brought to work every day. He kept glancing at Adana, then back at the road ahead, almost as if this was a dream that might vanish if he blinked too long. That very morning, he had been scrubbing tiles in the supermarket restrooms. Now, he was engaged to Nigeria's most admired woman. Adana stole a quick glance at him. His eyes were red, not from tears, but from years of bleach fumes, exhaustion, and the grit of survival. She wanted to ask him everything, but not yet. He needed something first. "Before we go home," she said gently, "we're making a quick stop." Samuel nodded without a word. Minutes later, she parked in front of a high-end grooming studio. The glass doors bore gold lettering, Kingsman Barber and Spa. Inside, everything gleamed. marble floors, gold-rimmed mirrors, leather chairs that looked like they belonged in a luxury yacht. A sharply dressed receptionist opened the door with a polite bow, but paused at the sight of Samuel's faded uniform. Adana stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "He's with me." That was all it took. The staff immediately straightened and welcomed them in. "Let them clean you up," she told Samuel with a reassuring smile. "I'll wait here." For the next hour, Samuel sat quietly while skilled hands worked on him. His overgrown beard fell away in neat strokes. His thick, uneven hair was trimmed, washed, and styled until it shone. Warm towels, scented oils, and careful scrubbing removed years of grime from his skin. When they finally handed him a mirror, he blinked at the stranger staring back. His jawline was sharp. His eyes, once dulled by fatigue, now glimmered faintly with life. A stylist approached with a fresh outfit, a crisp white shirt, fitted black trousers, and polished leather shoes. Samuel hesitated, running his hands over the fabric like it was something sacred, then disappeared into the changing room. When he stepped out, Adana's jaw nearly dropped. Gone was the weary cleaner in a faded uniform. In his place stood a man who looked like he belonged in the pages of a lifestyle magazine. Adana smiled. "Now that's the man I saw." Samuel swallowed hard. "I feel like I just came back to life." "You haven't seen anything yet," she replied. They got back into the Lexus, the city blurring past them until they reached a towering white mansion framed by palm trees and a fountain. Samuel's eyes widened. "This is your house?" Adana smiled softly. "No, this is our home now." The gates swung open, revealing an interior so beautiful it seemed unreal. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, art from across Africa adorning the walls. At the foot of the staircase stood a little boy, no more than 6, holding a toy robot. His big brown eyes studied Samuel curiously. "Mummy, who is that?" the boy asked. Adana crouched down and beckoned him closer. "Chisholm, come say hello. This is my friend, Samuel. He'll be spending a lot of time with us from now on." The boy tilted his head. "Are you a good person?" Samuel smiled faintly. "I try to be." "Then you can stay," Chisholm said matter-of-factly, before running back upstairs. That evening, Adana showed Samuel to a guest room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite. She brought him a plate piled high with steaming jollof rice, fried plantains, and grilled chicken. Samuel ate slowly, savoring every bite like it was the first proper meal he'd had in years. Later, they sat on the balcony overlooking the Lagos skyline. Adana poured 2 glasses of wine and turned to him. "Tell me," she said quietly, "who are you, Samuel?" He took a long breath, his eyes fixed on the city lights. "My name is Samuel Ease. I was once a senior logistics manager for an international shipping firm. I had a wife, Chinyu, and a little daughter named Amara. We lived comfortably until a warehouse accident one night. I was injured, lost my job. The medical bills swallowed our savings. Chinyu tried to cope, but one day she left with Amara. I never saw them again." His voice wavered. "Since then, I've been taking whatever work I can find. Cleaning, lifting, sleeping wherever the night catches me. I stopped hoping for more." Adana's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "It's life." She looked at him with quiet determination. "Not anymore." For the first time in years, Samuel didn't just feel alive. He felt seen. The next morning, Samuel woke not to the sound of mops slapping tiled floors or the sharp smell of cleaning agents, but to sunlight streaming through silk curtains and the distant sound of birds singing in the garden. For a moment, he lay still, staring at the ornate ceiling. Then, with a small, disbelieving smile, he sat up. His beard was trimmed, his hair clean, his clothes fresh, and his body rested. A knock on the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he said. Chisholm peeked in, grinning. "Good morning, Uncle Samuel. Mummy says breakfast is ready." Samuel chuckled. "Good morning, Chisholm." The boy darted away, his little feet thudding down the hallway. Samuel got dressed and made his way downstairs. Adana sat at the head of the dining table, dressed in a sleek navy suit, a laptop open beside a steaming mug. The table was set with golden plates, fresh bread, fried eggs, pap, and a glass jug of orange juice. Good morning, she greeted warmly. Morning, Samuel replied, taking the seat across from her. She closed her laptop. Eat. You'll need your strength. He frowned slightly. Why? Are we going somewhere? Her lips curved into a small smile. You're starting work today. Samuel froze, a piece of bread halfway to his mouth. Work? Yes, she said simply. Not just any job. You're joining my company. He shook his head. Adana, I haven't worked in an office for years. I don't even... Samuel, she interrupted gently. I've seen the way you talk about systems, supply chains, efficiency. You're too smart to be scrubbing floors for the rest of your life. My logistics department needs you. And I need you. He stared at her, the words settling in slowly. I don't know if I'm ready, he admitted. I do, she said with certainty. You just need someone to remind you who you are. That afternoon, they pulled up in front of Adatech Global Logistics, a towering glass building in Victoria Island, the headquarters of Adana's billionaire enterprise. Inside, employees greeted her with respect, though more than a few pairs of eyes followed Samuel curiously. They took the elevator to the executive floor, where Adana opened the door to a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows, a sleek mahogany desk, and 2 computer monitors. A small plaque on the desk read, Samuel Ease, Head of Operations Strategy. Samuel stared at it like it might disappear if he blinked. This is for me? Adana smiled. From today. At first, it was overwhelming. The systems had evolved, the technology was new, and the scale of operations was far beyond anything Samuel had handled before. But his instincts kicked in. Within a week, he was identifying inefficiencies in supply routes, restructuring schedules, and suggesting changes that saved the company millions. One afternoon, Adana walked into his office holding a folder. You just saved us 200 million Nigerian nairas in annual losses. The board is impressed. Samuel looked up, stunned. I was just doing my job. That's exactly why you're so good at it, she replied. They shared a quiet moment, a look that held unspoken gratitude, respect, and something else neither of them dared to name yet. Weeks turned into months. Samuel thrived. He led meetings with confidence, mentored junior staff, and even represented the company at a major conference in Abuja. And Adana? She found herself laughing more, working less after hours, and spending more evenings on the balcony with Samuel and Chisholm, talking about life and dreams. One rainy night, with traffic glowing far below and the city wrapped in the soft hum of rain, Samuel turned to her. Why did you really stop for me that day? He asked. She smiled faintly. Because I saw a man who'd lost his way but not his worth. He held her gaze for a long time before speaking again. I thought you were mad. She laughed softly. I still am. The months slipped by like warm evenings in July, each one pulling Samuel and Adana closer together. What began as a strange arrangement, a billionaire businesswoman bringing a poor cleaner into her home, had become something neither of them could easily define. They worked side by side at Adatech, shared quiet dinners in the mansion, and co-parented Chisholm in a way that felt natural, unforced, like they had always been a family. Still, Samuel carried a silent thought in his heart. She found me broken. She lifted me up. But if I am to be her husband, I want to do it right. One Thursday evening, after a long day of meetings and strategy sessions, Adana returned home to find the mansion's rooftop balcony glowing with candles. Chisholm was there, grinning from ear to ear. Mummy, come upstairs. Uncle Samuel said it's important. She followed the trail of rose petals up to the balcony, where the Lego skyline glittered under the stars. Samuel stood at the far end, dressed in a tailored black suit. The man who once smelled of bleach and sweat now looked like he'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. When she reached him, he smiled. A smile she'd learned meant he was hiding something big. Adana Okafor, he began, his voice steady but soft. The day you stopped for me, I thought you were insane. I was a cleaner with nothing to my name. No home, no hope, no reason to keep going. And yet you knelt before me. Her eyes shimmered as he continued. You gave me a home. You gave me back my dignity. You made me believe again. But more than anything, you gave me love. I want to return that love in the way you deserve. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and sank to one knee. Gasps came from the two house staff watching discreetly from the doorway. Samuel opened the box to reveal a platinum ring with a deep emerald stone, her favorite color. Adana, he said, his voice trembling, you began this story by asking me to marry you. Now let me finish it properly. Will you marry me? Her breath caught in her throat. Tears welled up, and she let out a laugh that was half joy, half disbelief. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Samuel. 1,000 times yes. Chisholm jumped up and down, clapping so hard his little hands turned red. Samuel slipped the ring onto her finger, and in that moment, the rooftop balcony wasn't just a view over Lagos, it was the start of a new chapter. 2 months later, their wedding became one of the most talked about events in Nigeria. Celebrities, business leaders, and government dignitaries attended. The media called it a love story written by Grace. But for Adana and Samuel, it wasn't about the spectacle. It was about the moment she looked into his eyes as they exchanged vows and knew, against all odds, against all logic, they had found their way home to each other. 3 years had passed since the night Samuel knelt on the rooftop and asked Adana to marry him. 3 years since the cleaner who once mopped marble floors in silence had become co-CEO of Ada Tech and husband to one of Nigeria's most admired businesswomen. In that time, the company had grown beyond anything Adana had imagined. Samuel's innovative data systems and business strategies brought in millions in new contracts, and Ada Tech expanded across West Africa. But their greatest achievement wasn't on the balance sheets. It was in the laughter that now filled their home. Chisholm had grown into a bright, confident 7-year-old who adored his stepfather. And soon, there was another child, a little girl named Amara, born 2 years after the wedding. Samuel held Amara in his arms the day she was born, his eyes misty. You don't know it yet, he whispered, but you've come into a miracle. Life was sweet, but Adana had begun to feel a stirring, a pull to do something bigger. One evening, as they sat in the living room after dinner, she turned to Samuel. I've been thinking it's time we gave back in a way that changes lives forever. He set down his tea. What do you mean? I mean a foundation, she said firmly, for people like you once were. Cleaners, security guards, street vendors, those everyone overlooks. We'll give them skills, training, and jobs in tech and business. We'll remind them that their story isn't over. Samuel's chest tightened. You'd name it after me? She smiled. After us. After what we stand for. And so, the Okafor Foundation was born. 3 months later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony drew a crowd. The facility was a sprawling campus with dormitories, computer labs, business classrooms, and a startup incubator. Dozens of men and women who had once been invisible in society now stood in crisp shirts, holding laptops and plans for their futures. Standing before the crowd, Samuel said, When I was a cleaner, all I wanted was to be seen. Adana saw me. She didn't just change my life. She gave me a reason to live again. This foundation is about giving that reason to others. Applause thundered through the air. In the years that followed, the Okafor Foundation grew across Nigeria and then into other African countries. Former cleaners became business owners, widows became tech trainers, and young boys who once sold sachet water on the streets pitched their inventions to global investors. Their slogan was printed on every wall. Your story isn't over yet. And through it all, Samuel and Adana's love never wavered. One quiet afternoon, years later, they sat on a garden bench watching Amara and Chisholm's children play on the foundation's lawn. Silver now streaked Samuel's hair, and Adana's eyes had softened with time. I used to think God had forgotten me, Samuel said quietly. Now I know he was just preparing me for you. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Everything was leading here. They watched the children run, laughter floating in the warm air. And Samuel knew, no matter how far he had fallen once, this was the life he was always meant to rise to. 10 years had passed since Adana had stood on the marble floor of Kingsman Towers, looked into the tired eyes of a cleaner, and asked him to marry her. 10 years since Samuel Okafor's life had turned from mopping tiles to standing on stages as a respected leader, husband, and father. The world had watched their journey with awe. Documentaries, books, and university case studies told their story, not just of business growth, but of a love that rose from the most unlikely place. Their son Chisholm was now a software engineer building apps for rural schools. Their daughter Amara was a journalist traveling across Africa to share stories of hope and resilience. Both had inherited their parents' drive, compassion, and stubborn belief that no one was beyond redemption. One sunny afternoon, Samuel and Adana sat on their favorite garden bench. The Okafor Foundation's campus bustled in the background, trainees attending coding classes, young entrepreneurs preparing pitches, and children running across the playground. Samuel held a watering can, tending to the roses they'd planted on their wedding anniversary. You know, he began, I still think about that day you walked up to me. I thought you'd lost your mind. She laughed. I still think you were rude, making me kneel. You needed to prove you meant it. His eyes softened. And you did. They fell silent for a moment, just listening to the distant laughter of children. Adana turned to him. Do you regret anything? He smiled. Only that I didn't meet you sooner. Just then, their granddaughter ran up, clutching a piece of paper. Grandma, Grandpa, look. They unfolded it. It was a drawing of a woman kneeling before a man in a cleaner's uniform. Above it, in uneven handwriting, were the words, Love begins where pride ends. Samuel stared at it for a long moment. She gets it, he murmured. Adana kissed the girl's forehead. She comes from it. As the sun dipped behind the foundation's buildings, painting the sky gold, Samuel realized something. All the pain, the loss, the years of being invisible, they had all led here. To this garden, this love, this legacy. And though the cleaner he once was no longer existed, the man he had become would never forget the day one woman believed in him enough to say the word that changed everything. Please,